I'm Stan Copeland, and I'm coming to you from the flame. Today, I want to address what is called the protocol legislation, reconciliation, and grace through separation. The 2019 Special Call General Conference not only failed to resolve our differences related to inclusion of LGBTQ persons, rather it doubled down on what many call hurtful language in the Book of Discipline, and even added punitive measures for disobedience. There is wide agreement that if the vote had been among just U.S. delegates, the One Church plan, supported by a very high percentage of our bishops and granting more local decision-making, would have passed by as much as 65% or greater. The One Church plan acknowledged that there is a big difference in a church in rural East Texas, a church in an urban neighborhood that has a high percentage of members on the LGBTQ spectrum, and a church in a village in East Congo. Local decisions was the emphasis. However, we are a global church, and the Central Conference delegates were, as always, heavily recruited by the Conservative Coalition. The result was the One Church plan failed, and more restrictive traditional plan was passed by 56 votes. We left General Conference more divided and less inclusive than ever. Months after the conference, a group was formed representing different coalitions to sit down with a highly respected mediator to work out a plan forward. The Conservative Coalition did not want to stay in the United Methodist Church, even after orchestrating their win at General Conference. They wanted to be able to leave the denomination with their churches, property, assets, and cash. The salient points of the protocol are these. Number one, a new Traditional Methodist Denomination would form, maintaining LGBTQ restrictions underscored in their new Book of Discipline. Two, a new Progressive Methodist Church would also form with full inclusion of LGBTQ persons in all of their churches as a matter of justice and equality. Three, conferences and central conferences could leave the UMC by a vote of 57% to join another approved Methodist denomination and take with them their property with the relaxing of the existing trust clause. Clergy, this is number 4, would have to make decisions too related to disaffiliation with the UMC, and their pensions would be intact if they left. 5, $27 million would be set aside for the support of the new denominations. $25 million would go to the traditional denomination, now known as the Global Methodist Church, the GMC. $2 million would be seed money for other new denominations. 6, $39 million would go for ministries by and for ethnic racial communities in the United States and for Africa University, and given over the next 8 years. 7, the post-separation UMC will strive to create a more equitable structure of regional conferences to facilitate ministry adaptation to the regional contexts. And 8, the traditional plan would be repealed and hurtful language removed from the United Methodist Church Book of Discipline. 9, UMCs and pastors, being more traditional in their culture and beliefs, would have more local autonomy on their ministry in their cultures, much like the One Church plan outlined. And 10, all of this was to go into effect at the conclusion of General Conference on May the 15th, 2020. Before we could meet for General Conference in 2020, the world changed and was largely shut down due to the pandemic. With millions getting sick and dying, global economies reeling, many people in our pews are now concerned about a viable future for the church. Leaving the denomination over whether or not to fully include LGBTQ children of God in the UMC seems risky to many, if not a bit ridiculous. If ever the church appeared to be out of touch and irrelevant, I believe it is now. Yet some will enter the sphere of new denominational structure in the hope that it works, and that being against full inclusion of a population of people will be attractive. Really? Especially regarding a new generation of young people to come. The rest of us United Methodists will restructure and regroup. My prayer, full expectation, and where I will spend my time is working on a UMC that will be predominantly centrist in our theology and socially also, as always, and not to one extreme or the other. More relevant, efficient, and effective. Local church-driven, annual conference-based, and global mission-focused. Leaner, related to boards, agencies, and committees, costing churches less in apportionments. Encouraging a culture of generosity and seeing the power in our work together. Honed and nimble to impact the world and make disciples of Jesus like never before. For me, as a traditional Methodist, and in my theological beliefs, I'm all about loving people into a relationship with Jesus. The big question is, how do we reach young millennials and Gen Z persons, the nuns, if you will? And polls have proven that they have largely written us off as irrelevant, asking the wrong questions, and not living authentically as followers of Jesus and His love and passion for all people. And if we don't reach new generations, what is our future? I cannot support the protocol now based on this criterion. 1, we don't need a new plan to graciously exit the denomination. We already have one. 2, we should not encourage annual conferences and central conferences by a low threshold vote of 57% to leave the denomination. 3, why would we pay churches to leave to the tune of $27 million if we are already graciously letting them walk with their property and our budgets related to mission and ministry are already stretched? 4, I've been troubled with the continued aggressive nature of the conservative coalitions in their active recruitment of churches and clergy in our annual conferences. That is nothing short of proselytizing in some cases. And likewise, even a few of our bishops who work on our nickel are involved in influencing disaffiliation. 5, I have witnessed the same old that is far from the advertisement of reconciliation, much less grace. Due to what we are witnessing now, I ask, what is to keep the Institute of Religion and Democracy, IRD, Wesley Covenant Association, WCA, the Confessing Movement, and Good News from continuing to recruit away from the denomination? I'll tell you in a word, nothing. Will recruiting as many churches and pastors away from our denomination continue? In another word, yes. Will local churches and annual conferences be torn asunder by the continued political wrangling? Absolutely, I'm sadly to say and believe. I'm a no on support of the protocol, for I see very little having to do with reconciliation and grace. I'm a yes on making a gracious way for those who desire to leave the UMC, even to form a new denomination, on the right or the left, to do so. I do have great hope and expectations at what the United Methodist Church will become. I support regionalization as lifted up in the Christmas covenant, coming from members of our central conferences. I'll say much more about that in the next episode of From the Flame. Thanks for subscribing to the Picklin Parson channel, and we'll keep these videos coming to you.